no financial interest in any of the machines. We have a whole long list of electrophysiological tests. And if you look at electrophysiological tests, all these tests are basically designed to get a little more information out of the retinal layers. We have multiple retinal layers, and you have different tests which are used to analyze different layers of the retina. So based on what abnormality you see in a particular patient, you will be ordering the test. We don't do all the tests in all the patients. If you're looking clinically, you find that the pathology is in the RP, you do the EOG test. If you see it's more of a retinal pathology, you'll do a ERG test. If it's more superficial retina, you'll do the VP or the pattern ERG tests. Now, both pattern ERG and VP have some similarity and a lot of dissimilarity between the two. The similarity is in the stimulus that we use for the patient. We do the tests with undilated pupils. We use a pattern stimulus, that's a monitor with checkerboard pattern which reverses with white and black alternating. So as far as the stimulus is concerned, it's more or less similar. But the similarity ends there. You need to understand pattern ERG is a locally recorded stimulus potential. The recording is done from the ocular surface itself, whereas a pattern VP you're recording from the occipital cortex, in the region of the occipital cortex. So the pattern ERG will give you a more local response from the retina itself, whereas the pattern VP will give you some idea about the visual pathway. Conventional ERG, Dr. Basmati will be speaking, you use what we call as a flash stimulus. The entire retina is stimulated. Now, very earlier on, their workers, Riggs and his co-workers, found that when they used, instead of a flash, when they used a pattern stimulus, they were getting some potentials, but they were not able to find out what these potentials are all about until the non-corneal contact lenses electrode came in, that the gold foil and the thread electrodes, detail electrodes came in, when we were able to elicit the pattern ERG much better. This picture is taken from the net, gives you the different kind of electrodes. For pattern ERGs, we use these kind of electrodes which don't cover the cornea, don't degrade the image. For both VP and pattern ERG, you need a well-focused image fall on the retina. So try to avoid anything coming in the way. They have to be refracted well, they have to be undilated, and you have to have a well-focused image on the retina to get good images. Pattern ERG, two types of recordings you can do, something called as a transient waveform, where you just give a flash and you see the entire waveform in the recording, and something called as a steady state. We won't be going into a steady state response, not used much clinically. Transient waveform is what we give more importance to. Now, these are the different parameters. Dr. Manoj has already covered all the different parameters that we use. We won't be going into the details of the test, details of the recordings. What we need to look at is what this waveform is all about. Very simple waveform. It has a small negative initial waveform, a positive waveform here called P50, and a negative wave, followed by a large negative waveform called N95. Now, to get any information, we said we are doing this test to get information about the retinal structures. If you want information about retinal structures, you should know where these waveforms are coming from. As far as pattern ERG is concerned, we are concerned with two components. We are concerned with P50, we are concerned with N95. The P50 is said to have a predominantly retinal origin. We're not sure of the exact cell of origin, but it's something distal to the ganglion cell. Maybe some component from the ganglion cells. N95 is said to have more of a ganglion cell origin. Now, these two things are important to remember, because based on this is how we are going to interpret a pattern ERG or a VEP. Three components which are used to measure anything in a waveform. When you are seeing a waveform, you need to measure to whether it's normal or not. One is the amplitudes, and the second is the ratio between the amplitudes. You do record the implicit times. I'm not going into that in this particular talk. Now, you need to know how these amplitudes are measured. These are measured from the base of the preceding wave to the apex of the next wave. It has significance, especially when you're calculating this N95 P50 ratio. Now, if you look at this P50 wave, if you were to calculate the amplitude, you will be calculating from the base of this, or if this is not well formed, you will have a sort of an average baseline here. From there to top you will be measuring. And for N95, you will be measuring from the top of N50 to the bottom of N95. What this implies is, if you have a reduction in the P50 waveform for whatever reason, the reduction will be on both sides. That means this ratio will remain the same. Whereas if you have a reduction in the N95 alone, if the P50 is reduced, this ratio will be reduced. This is important to understand, because if this ratio is normal, we say that it's unlikely to be a retinal pathology. If this ratio is reduced, we know that it is because the N95 component has come down. So the probable pathology you're looking at is somewhere in the ganglion cells or optic nerve in the ganglion cells. So understanding this ratio is important here again. Quickly going to the VEP, like we have seen, it's again a pattern stimulus which is generated at the visual cortex. Recording is at the visual cortex, and it detects abnormalities right from your macula up to the visual cortex. But having said that, it's predominantly the foveal area which is represented, because of central macula is projected on the surface of the occipital cortex, and foveal magnification is there on the occipital cortex. So what you're recording is essentially a foveal, whatever is generated at the fovea itself. You have different types of stimulus. We have pattern reversal, on-pattern onset, offset, flash stimulus. This is a typical recording where the electrodes are attached. There is a system called as a 1020 system, which helps it guiding exact attachment of either what we call as midline electrodes, or you can attach electrodes on the sides also. These are called as multi-channel recordings. Again, this has been covered previously. You do it with undilated pupils. You do monoocular recordings in VEPs, unless in children where you just want to know whether the response is there or not. Have to have a good refractive correction. Distance depends on the check size you're using. Now, this is again important to imagine. Most of our recordings of VEPs nowadays is midline electrodes. With midline electrodes, you can only pick up pre-chiasmal defects. You can pick up only defects in the optic nerve. You cannot detect chiasmal or post-chiasmal defects because of the decussation of the fibers at the chiasma. To detect this, we used to do something called as multi-channel recordings. With the new modalities of imaging, we hardly do this test now. It's most of the time we are just doing pre-chiasmal. So even if your VEP is normal, that does not mean the entire visual pathway is okay. You can only say that it is okay in the anterior visual path, up to the path. This is a typical waveform already shown in the previous talk. Latency, like he said, it's a sort of a misnomer, but that tends to be used quite often. We give importance to these two values, the P100 and the amplitudes of the waveforms. The latency is more important. Now, to understand the two tests, the pattern ERG and VEP, and how to make use of this clinically, this is probably one of the best papers or publications I have come across, which gives a whole lot of correlation between the two tests and helps you understand the test much better. Now, what the study has essentially done is they have studied both the pattern ERG and VEP in different conditions. The first condition is primarily retinal pathologies. You have conditions either affecting only the macula, or there is a macular involvement in a condition which affects a generalized retina. You don't have optic nerve pathologies. And it's also studied both these tests in other optic nerve, predominantly optic nerve conditions, especially demyelinating optic neuritis, iridomacular optic atrophies, and compressive disorders. Interesting to look at the findings. Now, when you look at purely macular pathology, this can be just a macular dystrophy or a simple CSR, or a retinal pathology, a diffuse pathology of retinitis pigmentosa, inflammatory pathology with macular involvement. What they have found is the P50 waveform amplitude is subnormal. We know that the P50 comes from the retinal side, so the P50 is abnormal. The ratio is normal, because even though the P50 is reduced, it's reduced both on this side and the other side, so the ratio remains more or less normal. VEP is abnormal. This is important to understand. Again, we'll come to this subsequently. This is a plot they have given where they have plotted the P50 amplitudes. This is the average P50 amplitude, and most of the values are abnormal. And this is the P100 VEP latencies. The normal values here, and most of the values are delayed. P50 component is in the PRG is usually subnormal in almost all eyes. tendency for lower P50 component amplitude in relation to increasing P50 latencies. And if you look at the ratio, the N95 is to P50 ratios, most of them will be normal. And we have already given the explanation why this is so. So what we have seen in patients with predominantly macular pathology is the VP is delayed. The P100 latency is delayed. P50 amplitude is reduced. This ratio is normal. So even if you're doing only a VP and getting an abnormal latency, it's incorrect to assume that it is an optic nerve pathology. It can still be a macular pathology. This is something which is often ignored. Most of us know about it, but when we look at VP recordings, the moment we see a delayed latency, we say it's an optic nerve pathology. It may not be true, and that's where the role of pattern ERG comes in. It helps you to try to delineate the two. Now, what happens in optic nerve disorders? We have seen what happens in retinal pathologies. What happens in optic nerve disorders? In optic nerve disorders, initially subgrouped it into only demyelinating optic neuritis, optic disorders. You have a delay in the P100 latencies. You have more or less a normal P50 amplitude because P50 comes predominantly from the retinal side. The ratio is reduced. Here again, the ratio is reduced because your N95s comes from the ganglion cell side. So that is why the ratio is reduced here. And this gives you the values where what we have just told. The P100 latencies are delayed, P50 amplitudes are more or less normal, and this ratio is reduced in these demyelinating optic nerve disease. Now, having said that, it's important to realize that if you do a pattern ERG in a patient with an acute optic neuritis, you are going to get abnormal P50 values. So you have to be careful. Whatever has been described so far are in cases beyond 3 weeks where the optic neuritis is more or less resolved. And those are the findings in this. In an acute case, you may get P50 abnormal because there is said to be some inflammatory component even distal to the ganglion cell in these cases. The same thing more or less happens in other optic atrophies, familial optic atrophies, where you have normal P50 and a delayed P100, and the ratio is reduced in these cases. AION is said to affect P50 amplitudes a little more than our other optic nerve disorders. Compressive disorders, again you see similar values, and this pattern ERG is said to have some kind of a prognostic role. We don't use it so often, but it is said that if pattern ERG is abnormal, if the P50 component is abnormal, that means there has already been a retrograde damage. So it's unlikely the patient is going to recover after the neurosurgical procedures. This chart sort of highlights whatever we have already told, what happens to pattern ERG in macular disorders, what happens in optic nerve conditions. And this algorithm, I've taken it from the case sheet itself, gives you one way of approaching a patient with a vision loss. Somebody comes with a vision loss, you're examining the patient, not sure what the cause is. You do a simple VEP. If you get the VEP abnormal, then you go on to do the pattern ERG. When you say VEP is abnormal, we have seen that the pathology can be right in the fovea or retinal pathology up to the anterior visual pathways. If you do a pattern ERG, if the pattern ERG is normal, you're likely to be dealing with an optic nerve pathology. Pattern ERG is abnormal, look at what the abnormality is. Is the P50 abnormal or is the N95 abnormal? P50 is normal, you're again looking at optic nerve pathology. P50 is abnormal, then you go on to do an ERG if you feel there's a generalized pathology, and you can differentiate macular from generalized retinal disorders. So this is one way of algorithm. You need not do it in all cases. The tests we order, tests we do really depends on the clinical picture and presentations of a different patient. But this is how you can use both these tests to try to define where the pathology is in a given patient. Thank you.